The Oppression Olympics. Whose victimhood wins the gold medal? Next on Campus Roundup. Hi, I'm Dr. Duke, and this is the Campus Roundup at the College Fix. Our top story segment today focuses on an academic conference devoted to blackness that wasn't black enough for the participants. To talk more about this, we welcome Chase Watkins, a student at Utah Valley University and a journalist for the College Fix. Chase, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Duke.
You wrote a very interesting article. We're going to title it The Olympics of Oppression, right? So at this University of California conference devoted to minority issues, apparently the minorities were not happy with the way it shook out. Talk a little bit about your article. What was the primary story here?
Right. So this conference, it's held at the University of California every year, sort of devoted to the plight of black students, or the supposed plight of black students. And the real problem was these students didn't feel like their conference was pro-black enough, and even felt like the university was discriminating against them.
Right, and so you have this. You see this all across the country, right? More and more resources, more and more time, more and more special privileges devoted to minority kids that just don't seem to make the minority kids happy. What do you think? You mentioned that one of the main participants in the campus conference is now protesting, and talk about this list of demands that some of the African American students submitted to the school.
Right. So there are 8 demands. They range in one of them, for instance, is creating a forced gender and diversity course that all faculty, of course, if these demands go through, that all faculty would have to take and pass with flying colors. And also, this is something I thought was pretty insane, a campus-wide common book filled with the work of radical black scholars. And its work and this book would be promoted by the university.
Right, and so what we're asking for here is not greater recognition or inclusion. We're not asking for African Americans to have more prominent positions. What they're asking for is radical black voices, revolutionary black voices be given a primary place on campus.
Right, correct.
In researching your article, how did the university respond to you? Were you able to talk to a university representative?
The university has not responded to me. Their PR department, or neither their PR department nor their president did reach out to my requests. And
when you reached out to the student activist, one of the activists who's created this list of demands, did she respond back to you?
She did. I contacted her via Facebook message, and we had a conversation. I asked her multiple times, I think it was 3 or 4. I was just asking her for specific examples of racism at the conference, and over again, she stated the specific examples are in my article. I don't know if it's just me, but I read the article many a time and did not find those specific examples. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
The only thing I could find that was remotely close to that is a Kanye Western party that the university hosted, and apparently black students did not like that.
Well, given Kanye's recent support for Donald Trump, I guess I'm not surprised. But I read the article, too, and I had the same problem. And I've been reading student writing for 25 years. Right. All of this insistence on racism, discrimination, marginalization, silencing, without a single shred of actual evidence. But I guess in radical progressive circles these days, evidence isn't really proof of anything. It's just what the kids feel more that tells the story.
Right. Correct. I guess they're not fond of the saying "facts don't care about your feelings."
Well, facts we know are holdovers of white supremacy, apparently. So, in your conversations with this young woman, other than saying, "Look at my article for the examples of racism," did you mention to her that you couldn't see them, or you had a hard time discerning what they were?
I did. I mentioned to her that at least twice, and she she just blew me off and just pointed me to the article again, and I just wasn't able to find those examples.
Well, you should be very proud. It's kind of a coup to get anybody on either side of these stories like these to talk to you. So that's a great first step for you. And it's interesting too, right? That the student who's pushing the agenda was willing to at least go back and forth with you a little bit, and predictably the university was not.
Props to her. I mean, willing to have a discourse. That's fantastic.
Well, let me ask you this by way of winding up our segment here. In conducting this investigation, writing this journalistic piece, what do you as an individual take away from it? What piece of experience for the next time you have to write an article is going to stay in your head because of what you experienced here?
I think that the broader issue is sort of a culture of victimhood that I think America as a whole sort of faces. And I think this is most evidenced by Black students saying, it's because of anti-Blackness that I'm discriminated against, or it's because of racism that I'm not ahead of the world, that I'm not ahead in the world. And this is the thing that we need to change. We need to reinculcate into society an idea that you can pull yourself out of your problems. Fix yourself. It's not an issue of blaming other people.
I like what you said. That's why we titled this the Olympics, right? The Olympics of oppression, because it's who can be the biggest victim, who gets the most points for their victimhood, how many victim boxes can you check that make you somehow special as a victim.
Yeah, doesn't make any sense.
Well, Chase, we really appreciate your time today. To read more stories like this, follow The College Fix on Twitter and Facebook. Chase Watkins, again, thank you for your time and insight today. Time now for Talking Campus, our weekly discussion with members of the College Fix editorial team. Today I'm joined by College Fix assistant editor Daniel Payne for a conversation about the Oppression Olympics. Daniel, thanks for joining us today.
Duke, always good to be here. Thanks.
Well, you have pretty broad experience covering such issues. Talk about this. What does it mean to create a victimhood culture like the one we now have on college campuses, where to be a victim, ironically, is to be, in a way, privileged? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think privilege is the right word given the context. On so many of these campuses, there really is this struggle to see who can be the most oppressed, who can claim the most oppression. Is it a particular racial minority? Is it blacks? Is it Middle Easterners? Is it somebody from the LGBT community? And what you end up having is that when a lot of these young folks get together in conferences or meetings or classrooms, a lot of times it devolves into the shouting match of who is being ground down to the dirt more. So you end up with people at each other's throats, trying to fight and figure out who is the most oppressed.
Well, and these conferences are taking place on university campuses, paid for and financed by universities, run by university faculty members oftentimes. Doesn't this undercut the whole argument, though? If different minority groups are vying to be the worst treated, or to be able to claim being the worst treated, doesn't that by itself kind of invalidate the argument that the perks that they're getting balance out, right? I'm not phrasing that correctly. Let me say that again. If what you're wanting to do is argue that you're the most victimized, how can you actually argue that you are when more perks, more benefits, more recognition, more money seem to come by being able to claim the gold medal in persecution on a college campus?
Well, yeah, I mean, it becomes kind of a vicious circle where, the student who claims the most oppression does end up being the most elevated, and therefore has to further justify this by claiming even more oppression. So what you have is this kind of game of stacking where each student is trying to further justify all of the gifts that have been showered on them. And so you end up with students getting really creative, trying to explain why they're worse off. And, a few years ago, even, this would have seemed like an exercise in madness. But it really kind of has become the rule of the day, and not just at the most extreme campuses. It's at a lot of the ones that are just what most people would consider average.
Well, a few years ago, this would not even been believable as a Saturday Night Live skit. I mean, and what you just said, I think, is brilliant. If you come in with a silver or a bronze medal, if you're not deemed the most oppressed, doesn't that by itself mean that you're more impressed than the gold medal winner? The gold medal winner of oppression at least was recognized as suffering by giving me the silver, or my group the bronze. I'm only second or third on the list. You're not recognizing me as much, which makes me a bigger victim to begin with.
Well, first of all, Duke, I want to say that gold and silver are clearly symbols of the old imperialist patriarchy. So I know I don't want to go down that road, but yeah, and there was this Students of Color conference at the University of California, Santa Barbara this year. They actually hold this conference every year on a different campus, and this year was at Santa Barbara, and a large number of Black students were really dissatisfied with how it was run, even though there was a very heavy emphasis on confronting anti-Black racism. Apparently, it just wasn't enough. So this sort of splinter faction broke off and issued a list of demands to the university to improve the standing of Black students on its campus, and they said that they would take further action if the demands weren't met. So that's the kind of madness you see in practice when the sort of Impression Olympics gets rolling.
Well, the madness is even worse than that, because on the one hand, intersectionality on college campuses, which has become dominant, stresses how all people except apparently straight white men are being oppressed the same way and being oppressed in unison. But yet when you do that at these conferences, individual groups balk at the idea that somebody else's pain is as great as my pain.
Right, and I mean, you pile identity on top of identity, so that a queer, trans, disabled, person of color is absolutely the most worse off. But then you pile one more identity on top of that, and suddenly they're ahead of them. So it devolves into a shouting match. It devolves into this struggle for campus administrators to lavish on students who are complaining the loudest. And what you get is something that doesn't benefit anybody and just ends up sort of making everybody look foolish and turning everybody against each other.
Well, it also creates a situation where it allows certain groups to complain and submit lists of demands to universities, which universities immediately comply with, which, of course, simply leaves in the minds of the complainer the fact that we're going to have to ask for more. If we ask for these 8 things and you give us these 8 things because you're a racist institution, we probably should have asked for 16. And so you have this really vicious cycle, and there's no way to satisfy it.
Yeah, and that's one thing you absolutely want to stress to university administrators, though I'm not sure how willing they are to listen, that you cannot win at this game. When these angry students come to you with this list of demands based on how oppressed they are, you might think that you're going to be able to satisfy this mob by giving into, like you said, 6 or 8 or 10 demands, but they're just going to come back with 10 or 12 or 15 demands the next day. The point of the Oppression Olympics isn't to solve anything. It's to continue to assert one's victimhood and get, ever greater concessions from the university out of it. So the only winning move really is not to play.
Right, and that is justified, what you just said is justified and verified by the fact that this entire conference was a sop to the complaints of minority students, and it just became a one big excuse to complain even more that the conference was further victimizing them. The attempt to fix the problem was the problem, and round we go. Be sure to stay up on all the latest news and information from the College Fix editors by joining us for really great conversations like this on all our social media platforms. Daniel Payne, assistant editor at the College Fix, thanks so much again for your time today. We are not just subsidizing racial oppression theory on college campuses. We are investing in it. It's one thing to provide subsidies to allow people to talk and fixate on racial problems. What we're doing is investing in a culture where racism is needed, real or imagined. It's needed, it's necessary to keep driving the we need this mill, the give us more mill. And what you're going to end up seeing here is that no matter how many ways colleges and universities contort their spines to bend over backward to stop discrimination on college campuses, the very fact that they're doing it signals to kids that discrimination exists. The more you reach out to help, the more convinced they are that the problem is much worse than what you're showing them. The only way to fix this is stand up and tell these kids, look, we're willing to help you this far. We're willing to immediately react to any real incidences of racial disharmony. But when it comes to the theorizing of race, this idea that you have the right to transform the way teachers teach, the way universities are structured, the way we fund and the way we handle students on campus, you just don't have that right. You're too young. You're too naive. Right? We'll deal with real instances of racism when they occur. We'll allow you to participate in those discussions. But as far as us subsidizing, nay, investing in your grievances so that you can just get more out of us, time to draw the line on that. And that's the Final Fix. I am Dr. Duke, and we will see you next time. For more videos and original articles, visit thecollegefix.com. And don't forget to like The College Fix on Facebook and follow on Twitter to receive your daily dose of right-minded news and commentary from across the nation.